This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air. Kia ora and welcome to the OI podcast, brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society Te Aparangi.
Kia ora, I'm Trudy.
And I'm Dr. Barb, and today we are very, very fortunate to have with us in the studio Matua Edward Ellison, and thank you very much for joining us here today, Edward. We are going to talk a little bit about a few things that are kind of related to the elections and related to our election special that's just come out with the interviews of all the candidates. So we'll get on to that in a little bit, but I thought first, if you felt like a little karakia to set us on our way and an introduction to set yourself in the scene for those unfortunate few out there who don't know who you are.
Kia ora, o te ahi ahi nei. Whakarongo ake ai ki te tangi a te manu nei, mā tui a ki runga, tui a ki raro, tui a ki roto, tui a ki waho, tui a I te here tangata, ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao, tui I te mukatakata, e a waiki nui, a waiki roa, I waiki pamamao, uhi wero, haramai te toki haumi e, ui e, taiki e. Kia ora, I'm Korua, Barb and Trudy, Edward Ellison. I am the upoko of Te Runanga Otako. I've been raised there, lived there all my life, and have become very involved, of course, in hapu matters, living quite close to the marae, and have been active across tribal matters as well. And so while I farm, and still farm down there, off farm I do quite a lot of other mahi related to both the runanga, the hapu, and to a degree still with Kai Tahu.
Ka pai, kia ora. And I believe you've been on the honours list, is that correct?
Yes, I have in ONZM.
Ooh. That's, Trudy, what are the ONZMs?
An Officer of New Zealand Service Medals?
Yeah. Merit, I think, is the last. The M starts for merit. Order of New Zealand Merit, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
It's one of the big ones, though, isn't it? I think it's one of the big ones that only a few people get. I think, yes, and a lot more accolades there. I'm sure that we could add on to that. But we will restrain ourselves and put just a link into the episode description there for all those who are interested to see. So there's been a lot of discussion just recently. The voting papers have come out this week. We're pre-recording this, but it will come out tomorrow, Friday, as it's first time out. So this is the week that the voting papers come out. So it's a big week in terms of local elections, and already there's been quite a lot of kind of controversy in the national newspapers about the ballot papers and the booklet that goes with it, and the Māori wards and the referenda that's going with the Māori wards. And I think it's quite confusing for some folk here in Dunedin because we don't have Māori wards here on the DCC or the ORC, and we're not having a referendum to see whether we would like them or not. And I wondered if you've been following that. I hope you have been following that in the news there, Edward.
Oh, probably for about 30 years. We as in iwi and also in our local areas took a position on Māori wards many decades ago.
So that's Kai Tahu that we're talking about there, yes. and the sort of that's why Dunedin, DCC and ORC. And is that across the whole of Kai Tahu Rohe? The
whole takiwā, that is right. We know from experience that when we go into those sort of referendums, we're quite a small percentage of the population. And in fact, there was another reason by that, we're a small percentage of the population. In fact, we're probably outnumbered 2 to 1 by Mātāwaka as well. So
Right.
if it goes to a public referenda, we don't figure or don't feature.
Right.
And we would have others determining who represents Māori.
Right.
Or tangata whenua, really, on councils. And so you would get a distorted outcome in terms you are not really, councils would not really get the type of representation they need to reflect mana whenua of the land.
Right.
So we know that it wouldn't work in our takiwā.
And that's been the case for some time. So there hasn't been Māori wards here, and I guess there was early on in the campaign. There was some people sort of pushing for having Māori wards, and I kind of didn't really understand that as a discussion. And I thought maybe, there's two possibilities: there's people coming in and stirring, or there's people who just think it's a good thing but haven't really kind of had much of a conversation around it, so it's sort of, for want of a better word, ignorance.
Well, they probably think it's one way you can get representation, but there can't be the only way. Yeah.
No, and also I think some of them are not fully aware of what the arrangements we have. What we do, and our rūnaka in the various localities develop their partnerships with the local councils. And we do it that way, and we've been doing that process now for many trienniums. And it's been building in momentum and becoming more effective in terms of having us sitting there. Admittedly, it doesn't have us voting at the council table, but it's a progression that we think works. It ensures that the voice of the mana whenua is the voice at the table and not a random electoral process.
And that seems to be more in the spirit of Section 4 and of the Treaty of Waitangi.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the idea is, correct me where I'm going wrong here, Edward, but the idea in my mind is that it's a partnership, and a partnership requires discussion and representation at all levels right through, and kind of setting the agenda and the strategic vision and that partnership that walks through all points of things, which if you reduce that partnership down to a single seat or a ward, then all of a sudden you're not in partnership so much. You're a minority again.
Well, that is right, because often if there were a ward, perhaps in the Te Waipounamu, you wouldn't have 5 or 6 people, you might get 1 or 2. And so that's right, you're still really one voice or 2 voices among quite a number. See, what we have, and it's not just at the lower level of the staffing arrangement, we have a mana-to-mana normally arrangement with the council. And it could be termed different things in different places. But invariably that means we sit down periodically at that level with councillors and the leading representatives of the rūnaka, and we talk through strategic matters at a higher level, in a mana-to-mana level. We'll have other relationships down there. We set up entities like Ōkaha, who do that engagement and maintain that day-to-day connection at a staffing level, or engage with community as need be. And then there's also the opportunity for the staff to meet of the various councils, meet with the likes of Ōkaha, or in some instances with rūnaka. So we have layers that we work consistently with councils. More so, of course, with Dunedin, the Otago Regional Council, and to a degree we do quite a lot with Queenstown, and we're developing those partnerships with the other councils, Central Otago, Waitaki, Clutha yet to kick off. But it's a progression. Yeah.
And there we're talking about the rūnaka large scale as opposed to just Otago?
It's invariably collective. the collective rūnaka have their representatives who will come in and work together. There are instances where particular topics are purely within the takiwā of a rūnaka. They'll deal with that, but in large part of Otago is quite a shared, even with Southland.
Yeah.
So we work and we do that. That helps councils who would have difficulty working out the intricacies of that, and their aukaha and their equivalent, Te Ao Marama in Southland, assist with that. And occasionally Te Rūninga o Ngai Tahu on bigger issues will come in and be involved as well. So there's a few moving parts.
But I mean, it sounds like a sensible structure to me, really.
Well, it's about, getting your community involved and getting the right bits of the community involved. And I think it's quite a good, I'm kind of thinking of a marriage for some reason, like, a marriage is a partnership. You don't get assigned because you're a wife or a husband or whatever, like I get one vote. No, it's a relationship. And if you spread it out further into your family and then I think it's quite a good model. I was just thinking about community boards as you were talking, and perhaps that's a way they could work better. Yeah. Not saying that necessarily that they aren't, but, in other groups, Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple of things there. One thing that I'm very aware of is sort of fatigue on the part of the rūnaka, and particularly with people who are very accessible, like yourself. Thank you again for coming along today. Because you're obviously getting asked by lots of people to consult on this and to give your input on this, and that if you're acting in a way that is a partnership, and the other part of the partnership is a paid position, then and I guess that's a little bit why you've got Ohaka as a sort of a consultancy sort of set up.
Yes, certainly, because initially we had iwi liaison position at the Otago Regional Council, and I could see that was okay for the regional council, but it didn't allow us to engage with the city or all the district councils. And so that's why, and then we did an iwi resource management plan. And when we wrote that, we realised, I think we can probably set up a standalone, and that will help the rūnaka who are a bit stretched, trying to respond to everyone.
Yeah.
And so the idea was it was to be resourced, by those who needed services. And then we were able to build capacity and experience and skills within Aukaha. And that's been pivotal to the way that we've developed the partnerships. It has allowed the rūnaka to do many other things that they're responsible for and not be required to handle day by day all their RMA stuff or local government work. So it's helped it work for us. Post-settlement, our treaty settlement in 1998, yes, and that just expanded requests and interests.
Yeah, and of course that was some time ago now, because you were, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were either amongst the first or the first to go through the treaty settlement process.
Second, yes.
Second, yeah. And it's a funny sort of a thing, but for the generation between 1998 and now, because of course some iwi in the North Island are still in that process, and maybe it's more difficult, maybe it's more complex issues because there's just more of everything. More there's more iwi, there's more people, there's more hapu, there's more everything. But I think there's been some real advantages to Kai Tahu from being very early there, in that this whole past generation have already benefited from the next part of the settlement stage.
Yeah, well, that's right. 27 years. Yeah, 27 years since we settled. And in reality, that's quite young. Well, in my personal view, it wasn't all going to start magically on day one. The mechanisms were there. We got the quantum, But the real key to the whole settlement was all the mechanisms and all the tools to help build these connections and remind people that they need to talk to us about various things, be it the river or the lake or the sea or the land whenua stuff. So we've been building on that, and it's, it's been a lot of work, but it's also enabled us to really build strong presence, partnership, and those partnerships to start to flower, because they are, there are great things coming out of those engagements we're having with the various councils and agencies across the takiwā. So, but in my personal view, we're only started.
We're just beginning, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, of course, it takes a long time to rebuild. So it's barely one generation since the settlement. And, gosh, I don't know how many generations that is. What's 150 years is in generations? Oh, sorry, quite a few. Anyway, 7 or 8 generations in loss that everything. And I know that Kai Tahu were one of the iwi that were really trying to hold the government to account pretty much from like 1841, 1843. So it's not just that, signed the treaty and then a century later came back and said, hey, that's not fair. It's just that it's taken that many years to actually come back to saying, hey, this is actually the document that we signed. This is where we're going for it. And I think what's been, for me, having done all the interviews with the ORC candidates, and the DCC candidates, which of course are all up for everybody to listen to, 15 minutes at each one. And Domi, our producer's gone through and put them all in alphabetical order now, so it's easy to find. We had them in sort of a random order to start with, so as not to advantage one person or the other, but they've all been up there for a couple of weeks now. So. And there's a lot there. There's sort of 13 or 14 hours of listening. But you can, of course, just go through and pick the ones that you are not sure about and listen to how they sound. And I would say that it's different hearing how they say things as well as what they're saying. So even though you could just get the transcripts, I think actually listening to them is quite useful. And of course they're available on www.oar.org.nz, and you can get them on YouTube, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'm just going to do a little plug there in the middle. But what I was thinking was, as I was listening to those interviews, it was quite reassuring that some of the candidates, and particularly I would say a portion of the incumbent candidates from both the ORC and the DCC, had really taken on board both this idea of partnership and the need for partnership, and were actually, progressing that. And I wondered if you had insights into that or comments about that.
Yes, well, but at the city we have Te Pai. Prior to that we did have for nearly 20 years the Māori Participation Working Party, which met with the mayor and senior councillors and the senior staff periodically, and so we built over time work programs and, worked out how we'd have input into various programs and ensured the city were aware of our priorities. And of course, from time to time that would involve all of the councillors. And of course, we have them on the marae periodically for induction and what have you. So particularly at the start of the atronium, preferably. And so, yes, there is that. You can see that growth in awareness and engagement's good. Same with the regional council. We've been building probably more solidly there, I think, over time. And we have what we call the mana to mana there that's been functioning now for 12, 13 years. And it was a slow build. And it's just really, particularly in the last 7 or 8 years, has sort of taken on a more meaning and effectiveness. We're integrated right through their activity. Okaha and Te Ao Marama are heavily involved. So, and so as a result, both at staffing level but also at the council level, there is that engagement and understanding and awareness. And I think there's still a learning, of course, going on there, and that's obvious on some topics that we don't always necessarily have total agreement or understandings. So, progress.
Progress. And I guess it's something that has to be restarted sort of, because of course the council changes, not completely, but a little bit every 3 years. Both councils change a little bit and not completely, whereas with the Runaka, it's possibly a more kind of continuous, gradual, kind of smooth change as the young folk grow up and the older folk maybe let them have more of a rein but still have a guiding hand on their shoulder there.
Yeah, well, what happens, and it's the same across the country really, is tangata whenua generally, they may take on a kaitiaki role with their whānau hapu or their runanga or their marae, and invariably they carry that for not 3 years. That's probably for life in many instances. And so I find that, look, I've been involved with the regional council since 92.
Right.
And probably the city for about the same. And there are others like me. And so we've seen succession of councillors, succession of mayors, succession of chief executives, succession of staff. So we have a different perspective. We have a longitudinal experience that has quite a good insight into the workings. And we're seeing new people come in all the time who are still, they're just fresh off the block in many respects.
Yeah.
So, there is that refresh that occurs across the table, so to speak, but we bring that tangata whenua perspective, which anyway is multi-generational, and we're just reflecting it during our time. So we're not there by electoral process. This is it's the mana of our people. Is there to exercise as best we can our rangatiratanga, and so they're different functions from really the way that councillors may see themselves sitting at a table. We're not the same as them, and they're not the same as us.
You must also have quite an interesting view of local body over that time as well, because you'll have kind of like all the institutional knowledge that gets lost when positions change. So, yeah, it'd be quite a unique position, I would have thought, to be in.
Yeah, I suppose if you take the long view, you see that there are cycles. And, we've nothing's new.
No, you say, not again.
We've seen that before.
Yeah. We're going to have this discussion again. Yeah.
And I think that underpins the patience.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
You just,
Yeah.
Just wait it out. Gosh. I did have some people, and I can't remember exactly who it was now, who said, and I think it was from one of the ORC candidates, on why they wanted Māori wards, that they, when I asked that question 4, and I'll just revise for everyone. So the question 4, when I was talking to the DCC candidates, it was quite a long form one. O Tākou Whakaihu Waka is committed to being a Tiriti-led university. It now has a Deputy Vice-Chancellor Māori. Māori academics are delivering high-value courses. Mataranga Māori research is world-renowned across health sciences and law, to name just a few. Considering Māori excellence as part of the fabric of the city, what are you doing to ensure your own professional development and thinking is in step with Te Tiriti? And please share your understanding of the role of Māori in local governance within a Te Tiriti context. So it was quite a long question with really a bit of a statement at the start. And I imagine, just being side-led there, I imagine that you yourself and the Runaka have had quite a lot of input into the University of Otago, or Tākou Whakaihu Waka. And I wondered if you wanted to have a comment on that.
Yes, we have.
As a sidebar.
Yeah, yes, we certainly have been engaged with the university from particularly the late 80s. and we endeavoured to build a connection there, and we found that wasn't quite working on review, and so we advised the university of that, and they came up with the idea of a treaty audit in 1998, which was quite novel, probably.
So how did that work? How did the treaty audit work?
Well, they engaged Dr. Ranginui Walker,
Mm-hmm.
who came down and conducted a thorough review. He was his co-assistant was Tahu Treaty, who was scribing for him, and he came up with 37 recommendations, and then we started to implement them, and we re-engaged following that.
Right.
With the university, we got a role on the council, and we started building again, implementing those recommendations and moving forward to build that treaty partnership with the university. And, very large organisation, institution, and that went well in some ways and not in others. And so, it's been a work in progress. I think we've moved with the rebranding and Otako Whakehu Waka, and we signed the MOU with the University Council 2 weeks ago. So, we've been reinvigorating that partnership, and we are doing this with in other areas all the time. This is what we do.
Yeah.
I like the idea of an audit.
Yeah, I like it as well. You've got a baseline of you know where you're at, what you need to improve on. You've got really clear guidelines as to what you need to do and where you need to get to.
And from the right people too.
Yeah.
It's,
I really like the idea of getting someone sort of from the outside almost in to do the audit. But of course Tahu Treaty was here and intrinsic to Otago, so sort of...
Well, actually the Otago Regional Council adopted the same idea.
Oh, right. So have they done an audit as well?
Yeah, in recent times, yes.
Oh, interesting. And how many points did they get?
Oh, well, that's still we're still working through the implementation phase. It's only relatively recent, and it was done by I've just forgotten the name. Kai Tahu, part of Kai Tahu.
And the DCC, have they done an audit, or are they looking to do an audit?
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. But we have got a different process going there with the cultural strategy that's been developed there.
So maybe something for the future.
Oh well, look, they're doing similar things, but in a different way.
I suppose you have different tools for different organisations.
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
suppose.
Yeah.
They don't all need to do an audit, but it just worked for the ORC.
And of course the Dunedin Public Hospital, which is one of the other big employers, it's unfortunately central controlled, so it's difficult to insist on an audit there, I imagine.
Well, we do have, I'm not involved directly in that, but we do have people engaged in that health sector. But, just going back to the city, they've got the Takiharu strategy,
right,
which is defining and guiding the development of the working partnership with mana whenua.
Of course, the other one is the Otago Polytech, and that's had a really rough time because it was really performing very well, ranked as one of the best, if not the best, performing polytechs, and then everything kind of got joined together and then pulled apart, and it's just difficult.
Well, I think what we are seeing is, the politics, each new government seems to want to reverse what the previous one did, and whether that's well thought through or not, and so tends to have us going around in circles. So it's a bit disappointing. They had only just created Te Pūkenga. Whether that was good or not, I don't know. And then,
well, no one knows, I think, because it never had a chance to be good or bad or anything, because it had literally just been created, and then the current government pulled it to pieces. Anyway, let's get back to local government, local elections. And where were we going from there?
We were talking about representation and how we develop those relationships in the city.
That's
and
right.
particular with the university, and then we were talking about audits and
other ways of moving them in. And I guess when I asked the candidates about what they were doing, because there was two parts to that. It was really, and you can comment on what you would expect from that question coming from your experience of it. But I was sort of thinking that, considering Māori excellence as part of the fabric of the city, what are you doing to ensure your own professional development and thinking is in step with Te Tiriti? I thought that was to give the candidates really an opportunity to say, this is what I'm personally doing, this is where I stand, this is how I think. And then the second part of it was to please share your understanding of the role of Māori in local government within a Te Tiriti context. And I think that's where I got some of these comments coming saying, oh, we should have wards because I don't know who to talk to. And if we've got a ward, then I'll go and talk to that person. And I sort of thought, and I was very good and very restrained, because we wanted the
candidates to talk. Yeah.
We wanted the candidates to talk. So I just had my script and I just said the words that were on my script, and I didn't sort of have any back and forward discussion with them about it. And we wanted it to be apolitical, so we got a committee together to make the questions. And essentially I was just the mouthpiece of those. But when I was hearing those answers, I was thinking, but surely there is someone that there is to talk to. We don't need a Māori ward for that. And then would that person who's elected just spend all their time just on the one, just being that liaison person and not actually be a functional councillor person? And I wondered if you wanted to comment on any or all of those thoughts.
Well, what we have done is we had the treaty settlement. We created Papatipu Rūnaka. We've created Aukaha, Te Ao Marama. The individual Rūnaka have created their relationships with councils. The councillors, or if they don't know who to talk to, our structures are there.
So it's really ignorance on their part, in a way, not to be too harsh. But if you don't know who you should be talking to, you should find that out, because it's there, the structure's there.
It's pretty fundamental, I would have thought. It's right there in front of them in terms of who the mana whenua of the area are. Mana whenua are the treaty partners. It's not mātāwaka who may be living here. If you want to talk about the local river or the local mountain or anything local in terms of te taiao, it's the mana whenua. So there's that distinction as well, and I'm not sure, I haven't heard those particular responses to your question.
Well, and there's a lot of them there. I wouldn't expect you to have heard all of them. No. But it is interesting that a lot of people don't seem to have understood the distinction between mana whenua and, I guess, takata Māori, just Māori that happen to be living here, but they may have whakapapa to the North Island iwi somewhere, and that is quite a big distinction. And I guess if people haven't understood that distinction, then their whole basis for discussion is really without any understanding of how the treaty works in the first place. That's right,
and in tikanga, because in the Māori world, we know if it's the local people, that's their business. You don't. If I was living in some part of the North Island, I don't speak for the people there. So that's a tikanga that works within Māoridom and respects the mana of the local iwi hapu. For those who are not aware of that distinction, it's thinking of a one-size-fits-all, and it's not really thinking. It's not thinking it through and understanding and learning what the distinction is.
And I think sometimes, to me, it seems as though there's sort of a very lazy kind of idea that people want just Māori as a whole to just fit into a structure that's already there. And that sort of seems a little bit how the Māori wards are kind of thinking. Okay, we've got this structure, just squish everything into that, rather than saying, hey, actually, we have two separate peoples here who may interact and have intermingled and been living next to each other for, coming up 200 years, but still those treaty partnerships were not made in sort of general. They were made with a specific people.
Yes, they're essentially thinking conventionally, not thinking outside the square, nothing innovative there or understanding of that distinction. And so it's conformist to what was in the past. We've been saying for generations that's not working.
Yeah.
That we haven't been recognised. So it's not recognising the fact that we do bring something else different to the table.
And I think for me, since I've come back to New Zealand, which is 12 years now, I was sort of away doing overseas stuff for 8 years, and then I came back, and there was a big change from when I left to when I came back 12 years ago. And I think one of the biggest things for me that is, and it's a small thing as well, but it's really useful, is to start off a meeting with a karakia and everybody just introducing themselves. And even if it's not in te reo, if people are just saying who they are and where they're from, it's sort of I like the idea, and I'm not religious at all, but I like the idea of the karakia because to me it's just saying, hey, we're all here, forget everything else at the moment, let's concentrate on what this one thing that we're talking about in the room here, give this our kind of concentration and focus, and let's kind of try and come to some consensus around this, and everybody share their ideas and feel that they're. And I think the idea of going around and everybody introducing themselves means that right from the start everyone feels included and like they have a voice and that they can say it. And for me, that's one of the most, and it sort of slows you down. Otherwise, you kind of want to jump straight to getting the conclusions before you've even talked. Trudy's looking at me here. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. I'm saying that I really appreciate the idea of it and the thinking of it.
Yeah, I also like the idea of introducing yourself because, you always got to be very careful. Now I think that person might be related to somebody's cousin, and as you. In my Pākehā family, as the generations are spread out, we don't have as much contact with our cousins anymore, but you just never know when somebody might pop up and you don't want to race off into a story, which really should have just stayed in the family. Yeah. So I think that, and it's about those connections too. It's about understanding who the people are, where they're from, and
where they're coming from. Yeah. Where they're coming from in the discussion, which I think is important. Anyway, we're talking a lot here, Edward, yes. And we should let you say something.
Yeah, one thing that struck me on our marae, because we do that. We have a pōwhiri, have a kai, and then we do the whakawhanangatanga, before a hui, and been doing that forever. One thing that struck me with our manuhiri, our visitors, tauiwi, was verbally they couldn't go past their grandparents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can go all the way back.
Yeah. I know. A lot of people can
yeah,
now.
Well, we're a bit different because we're from the Shetlands, and it's got that
good,
same...
Good. But it's also that thing on the marae, you don't just go to the marae, right, what's the deal?
Yeah.
You go through the preliminaries, and it's recognising mana and bringing people in and getting them into a place where they're all one, as equal, really, before you start the hui. And that's the preliminaries. Now, no one goes overseas to do a deal in China or Japan and just walks in the door and starts to do the business. It don't work.
No, it doesn't work. It's not something that happens. Yeah, and it's funny. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, I don't know, it's the whole protocol that's behind it is something I think we should lift up more because,
Well, it helps you get to the magic.
Yeah.
And of a forum, in my personal view. I always say the marae is the most neutral place in New Zealand. People look at, they struggle with that, but if they understand tikanga, once you get to that forum, and it's all of those protocols have been done, there's no more neutral place that I know of.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's quite a good concept, actually.
Now
it's the ultimate safe space. You can say what you like, and you might be challenged openly, but it's in a forum and a framework which it's safe to do. So
and it's useful to challenge things, and I find that even with myself, like it's useful to challenge your own ideas to see if they are actually solid and sensible. And if you can't do that, then I don't know, you should just go give up, really.
Which is interesting because I was thinking about something the other day and about Maori wards, and I don't know, something come up, and I thought that perhaps one of the challenges is that Pākehā treat like Maori as one, but we got to kind of think of them as like independent nations, and it doesn't matter how small they are, they're still independent with rights and responsibilities, and I think that's part of that 19th century nationalism that colonists brought with them. But I think we really need to change that framework in your mind to think about that these are independent entities or countries or whatever you want to call them, political units in their own right. Yeah. And so they were signing with independent political units, not a body as a whole, if I'm making any sense here.
A good example of that is there was 500 signatories, to the treaty? Yeah. And they all had their own mana.
Yeah, exactly.
No one of those could sign for another hapu,
Yeah.
So, yes, you're absolutely right. Treaty over every hill.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that it kind of almost brings around to thinking that you could have Māori wards just as a completely separate thing from the treaty, the partnership, and the existing system that you have with Kai Tahu. It's just like, because you could have, we don't have wards at all, but at some stage we had wards, and you could do that. There's no reason that wards need to be done by geography. You could have wards by, I don't know, ethnicity, or you could have wards by age, or you can have a student ward, or you can have a that sort of thing. It's just a different way of saying, okay, these people are a group, but as you're saying, it needs to be some sort of group that agrees that they are in some way homogenous. And I think that when we got rid of the wards for the council at large here, I think that actually is a good idea for Dunedin. I think it's good. Trudy's shaking her head. She doesn't think. Do you think we should have wards?
Well, I think there was way back, like it used to be a certain part of the town where the councillors would get elected from because they had the means to advertise and get their name out there, and wards were seen, and things move and change. So I'm not saying you don't have to go backwards. There are other ways you can achieve the same thing, but wards meant that different areas of the city did actually get specific representation.
Yeah. I guess that's true, but then with STV, of course, you can just rank your preference people, so it's not first past the post, and that kind of uplifts those groups to now be able to say, okay, there's someone running.
It's about, have I got the access to the resources to campaign, which is more of the challenge necessary.
Yes, which is why we were asking that spending caps question, and I was really surprised. We asked everyone what they thought of the spending caps, which are huge, like $54,000, which is just over the top, really. If everyone spent that amount of money. Anyway.
Well, looking at the billboards round, I think some of them might.
I don't know. And there's obviously been a massive discrepancy in the amount that everyone is spending. And someone also said, maybe people should be able to spend as much as they want. It's their money. And other people said, but the incumbents have got more name recognition. I sort of think, maybe if they're out in the, I don't know, maybe they've got name recognition because they're the incumbents, but we shouldn't be voting for people on name recognition. That is one of my really big bugbears. We should not be voting for people on name recognition alone. You should vote for people because they share values, principles, they work well for your community. Those things.
Yes, no, look, because of my long-term closeness to a lot of this, the name recognition thing invariably does play a part in who gets elected, and they shouldn't be voting on that.
What would you say were the things that you would advise people to vote on, to take special notice of?
Well, people who can articulate what their policies are, in the case of the city or the regional council or district, if they understand what the challenges are, the ability to work with it as a team, and really reflect their communities. Often it does appear to be sort of become individual, rather than working as a team. Because at the end of the day, you want the council to really work together and build strategy and go forward. So you're looking for people who can make good teams and really...
And a little bit of that depends on the mayor or the chair, but it also sometimes, like one toxic person in a room can really make it hard going.
Well, that's testing the skills of everyone to make that work. When there is, the odd outlier, but it's not impossible to still achieve well, even though you've got someone who's pushing the other way. Sometimes there's benefits in that.
Yeah, just thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
otherwise you end up a uniform bunch of
that group thing,
grey men in suits.
Yeah, and I guess it's where there's that difference of having constructive differences and like bringing up things and thinking them and inspecting your decisions and looking at them from all the, and then there's just kind of being
they're playing the person, not the ball.
And just being negative for the sake of negative, or just disagreeing with everything, or that kind and especially I guess when nastiness comes into it. And I think that that's another thing which, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems that one of the rules of speaking on the marae is to be respectful.
If you want to say some difficult things, try and do it with humour.
Yeah, true.
Well, that's right. There's ways to express things, but that's right. It's not blatant rudeness or disrespect. No, that's right. There's your own mana at stake as well when that occurs. So.
I think people forget that.
I think people forget that. Yeah. It's a good point. And I guess just for the last couple of minutes, what would you say to rangatahi out there who may not be registered, may not have voted before?
Well, look, I'd strongly encourage all rangatahi to enrol. If they have not enrolled, I often say I don't particularly care who they vote for as long as they enrol and vote, and over time they'll become discerning as to who fits their particular needs.
That's actually a good point. Just vote. Get yourself registered, and you can still register. www.vote.nz. Go in there and register. You will be asked, if you do it online, you will be asked for a Real Me identification thing, or I think a driver's license or something. And you will be asked also if you want to stand on the Māori roll or the general roll. And I don't know if you have 30 seconds worth of you would like to say about the Māori role versus the general role, Edward?
Oh, well, I'm on the Māori role. I mean, that's. I think that's still important going forward for New Zealand and for Māori to reach their mana motuhake. And so that's important. We don't have the same choice often in terms of who's there, but that's just where I have been, and that's individuals' choice as to what they do.
And of course you can change. It's not set in stone, and it doesn't matter for this local election. No. It only matters in Dunedin and Otago. It only matters for the national elections. That's right. So the important thing is to get on that roll and just go to vote.nz, register. Now, you can also just go down to the Plaza, DCC Plaza building, and you can do a special vote. You can do that from now right up until the voting you can do right up until midday on the 11th of October, the Saturday, and voting closes absolutely at 12 noon, and there'll be orange boxes where you can put your voting papers if you've got them in the mail. If you haven't got them in the mail and you don't get them this week or the start of next week, then you can register online, and you can still register. You won't get your papers sent to you. You'll have to go down and do a special vote, but you do not need identification or anything. You just rock up to the DCC Plaza. There's a special room there, and you fill out the form. You make a declaration to say, yes, I am who I am, and you vote there. And you can also enrol at the same time right up until midnight on the 10th, Friday the 10th of October. Assuming they're open on Friday, but I think that they'll be open a couple of late nights at least. But
good to stress all of that, and if people are on the Māori roll, it doesn't affect them voting on the local government.
Absolutely. Yep. So if you're on the Māori roll or you're on the general roll, the important thing is that you are registered, you're enrolled, and if you're not registered, you're not enrolled, you don't know what you're doing, just go to the DCC Plaza. The folk there are amazing. They're so helpful, and yeah, just do that.
Excellent.
What you should do actually is grab a couple of friends.
Yes.
Or anyone in your family who's not registered, and go down, because actually
have a voting party.
Have a voting party, yeah. It's a fantastic thing. It is really democracy at its most basic. And it's really good to get this all sorted, because then you're ready for the general elections next year.
And you only have to do it once.
You only have to register once.
Yeah,
that's true. And then you can update your address as you go. But yeah. You're on the register. Hey, thank you very much, Matua Edward. That's been fantastic having you along here. Last thoughts? Would you like to sign off?
Oh, look, I just wish everyone the best who's out there vying for their roles, and we look forward to the new triennium.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.
The Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences presents the Local Election 2025 special. Our aim is to demystify the voting process, encourage participation in local democracy. We present an apolitical political show, providing unbiased information, context and background on a range of issues. A refresher course on how to register, how to stand for election or nominate somebody else, how STV works and how to make sure your vote represents your values. Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society NZ Te Aparangi. Available on podcasts wherever you listen and from the Otago Access website, oar.org.nz. You can support this local election special by becoming a member of the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society Te Aparangi.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.